Hey guys, welcome back, and today we have another week of Broadway grosses, so let's get into it. Up first, we have & Juliet, and that went from 91.12 to 91.86, and 904K to 877K, a $26,000 decrease. Now, obviously, now these are decent numbers for & Juliet, but again, with a musical that has so many costs in terms of royalties and all that stuff, you definitely want to see it in the 950 plus area. It's not in any danger of closing at all. It's still doing very good, but it is starting to show age surprisingly early, and it definitely isn't a good week, but it's an okay week. They got bye week, but again, it's not in any danger of closing it is just having a pretty meh week. But yeah, so definitely & Juliet has not been the big behemoth hit it was last year, and we're definitely having to talk about it a lot more, because last year I would just say, oh, & Juliet, $1 million, moving on, but now it's starting to be a little bit more interesting. If it falls to 7, that's when the concern starts, but I don't think it's going to happen this year, at least. A Beautiful Noise, and that's closing in a few weeks, went from 68% to 66%, and 968K to 836K. Back to the Future had its first good week since the end of April, going from 81% to 95%, and 930K to 1,026,616. Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club fell pretty significantly from 99.95 to 99.96, and 1,965,344 to 1,721,760. But apparently there were comps for Tony voters, I think, so that's maybe why it declined so heavily. Hadestown is doing phenomenal, going from 99.93 to 100%, and 833K to 918K. Hamilton sold out and went from 1,858,132 to 1,804,220, and that average ticket is $169. So it's definitely not, there were shows like Merrily and Cabaret whose average ticket is higher than Hamilton's, and in some cases it's surpassed Hamilton in overall grosses. And so again, Hamilton is almost 10 years old. Next year it's going to be 10 years old. And it's still doing pretty well. Obviously, it's not doing the huge numbers that it was doing back in 2015, but you gotta admit, it's still doing baller numbers. I've noticed the weakness of it in the past year. Hell's Kitchen continues to be a hit, selling out and going from 1,557,434 to 1,554,417. Illinois went from 90% to 87%, and 816K to 720K, and almost 100K drop. Obviously, that's not great for Illinois. Is it in any danger? No, it's a limited engagement. I think it's going to win Best Musical, and for it being a dance musical and it being more mainstream than the past two Best Musical winners, it still is a full dance musical, so it definitely is going to appeal to a more niche audience. Still a solid week. It got by, but again, you would like to see it have an 8 in front of it, like 850 or 900, for a top Best Musical contender. So 720K is not bad, but it's not also great. It's just kind of meh. I'm assuming Illinois probably costs around $500,000 to $600,000 a week to put on, so it's definitely doing well enough, but it definitely could be doing a lot better. Merrily sold out again, 1,582,919 last week, and 1,612,607 this week. Moulin Rouge went from 99.16 to 98.12, and 1,172,642 to 1,112,591, a pretty steep drop. And again, it's showing that Moulin Rouge kind of is relying on stars, which is interesting because, it's supposed to be this tourist musical that doesn't need big stars, and suddenly it does. I feel like before COVID, Moulin Rouge was making crazy amount of money, and since it came back, it never quite got to that place, and so that could speak to the momentum building that a show can lose if it goes away, and Moulin Rouge definitely suffered from it. Now, obviously, they've got a lot of good weeks in the bank with Boy George, so they should be fine, and it's not in any danger at the current moment, But these are softer numbers than you would want from Moulin Rouge, knowing how expensive it is to put on, how large the cast is, how many songs they have to pay royalties to. It's a very expensive show to put on, and so the alarm bells kind of have to start going off when it's even in the low $1 million club. 6 went from 844K to 878K, and 91.56 to 91.16, so doing incredibly well. Subs fell pretty significantly from 92% to 95%, and 820K to 758K. Still solid numbers, to be sure, and the capacity did go up, but that gross, you want to keep it in the 800K area for subs. I think 750,000 is the lowest I would want them to go. Obviously, if they stay in the 700s, they are fine, but again, I think that without a Best Musical nomination, or Best Musical win, I don't see subs lasting more than, until January. Gatsby is still doing quite good, going from 97% to 93%, and 1,279,656 to 1,180,828. And again, it's doing fantastic business. However, I will say it is Tony less in terms of big nominations. It got bad press from the critics, so I think that it definitely needs to make a lot of money this summer to sustain itself in the fall, and it still could close in January. This still could become a less than a year flop. It definitely has the ability to do that, but again, it is doing steady business. It is doing absolutely fine. It's in no danger, but again, it's not doing Hell's Kitchen type numbers. Something like Hell's Kitchen, even if it doesn't win Best Musical, I don't suspect will close in January. It will make it to at least a year and a half, at least, with how good it's doing. Shows that do that good don't fall that heavily, but shows like Gatsby certainly can. So I think the summer it's going to continue to maintain $1 million, but when the fall comes is when we as an audience will see, is it going to be able to survive the fall slump? The Heart of Rock and Roll continues to just bafflingly, it baffles me that it's still alive, going from 287K to 309K, and 61% to 64%. The Notebook went from 88% to 90%, and 784K to 720K. The Notebook is definitely not in a good spot. 720K is not a great spot for any musical. The low 700,000 range is where no show wants to be, especially in new musical. And with the momentum that The Notebook started off on, it's underwhelming. It's disappointing business. And honestly, if it's doing this, it's supposed to be doing its best business now and in the summer, and if this happened in the fall, it would be a lot more understanding, a lot more, okay, it's not going to close. But I'm honestly thinking, if this cannot make $1 million in the summer for a couple of weeks, I don't think it's going to do well in the fall. And I think it could close in January, which is something that no one thought. Everyone thought this was going to be a mega hit. I thought it was going to be a hit with audiences. It still could be. I know that there's a lot of musicals, but it definitely seems to be performing pretty weakly. It started off strong and then it just plummeted. So definitely keeping an eye out on the Notebook. The Outsiders made $1 million and sold out. The Wiz went from 95% to 96%. And 1,497,307 to 1,475,932, and Water for Elephants went from 84% to 87%, and 1,101,619 to 1,028,450. So again, it's doing weaker in terms of $1 million club because you have Hell's Kitchen, The Outsiders, Water for Elephants, and Wiz, and they're all making $1 million, so it's on the weaker side. And again, I still stand by my stance that it's not going to win Best Musical. And if the only way for Water for Elephants to make it to at least a couple years is if it wins Best Musical, and it's not going to happen. And I think it will close in December or the beginning of next year. So anyways, those are my thoughts on the grosses. Definitely some interesting developments with The Notebook. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.